Hey everybody, it's Robert Greenblatt. Listen, I just had an epiphany. I just was on a listing appointment and I realized that the conversations I'm having with sellers today are very different than they've been historically. So here's what I mean. Years ago, you would list a home. Let's just pick a number. Seller would want around $300,000 for the house. So you might list it somewhere around 320, 325. You know, an old school lister or a seller might want to list it a little bit higher than that. So you have some wiggle room to negotiate, right? So the old school mentality was list it high so you can negotiate down. Then the last several years, we realized that doesn't work because homes are selling for reasonably close to the asking price for the last several years. So we noticed that the data showed us that if a home was listed at the proper price, it sells for very darn close to the asking price. For instance, on average in this area, pre-COVID, homes were selling for 97, 98% of the last list price. So if we're priced correctly, a seller was assured that we'd probably get close to the asking price. So we didn't want to have that big negotiating gap because then it would slow down showings and not generate as much interest. Now it's a little crazier. So I just went through a house where the sellers wanted in the 370s. House may not be worth that. I today am able to justify perhaps a list price of about 350. However, rather than the market dictating that the price is going to come down a little bit, we're projecting that if the showing activity is good, they're actually going to get more than their asking price, not less. There's a lot of that going on. And what's happening in this crazy market is we're starting to eliminate concerns with appraisals in some cases, because the conversations that we're having are, hey, is your buyer willing to waive an appraisal contingency in their financing? Are they able and willing to waive an appraisal contingency? So these conversations are happening more and more in this current market as I talk to you in September 2020. Absolutely crazy. So here's an example of a conversation I had with one of the buyers I'm helping, and I've never had a conversation like this in my career. So I get a phone call from one of my clients who's under contract on a house. About a month ago, he calls me up. He goes, hey, I spoke to the mortgage company about the appraisal that was done. I have good news to share with you. And I said, awesome. So the house appraised for our contract price. And he said, oh no, it didn't. It only appraised for $16,000 less than what we're paying for the house. And he was happy about that. In my career, I've never had that conversation before. That was a first. So what's happening is buyers are preparing themselves for bad appraisals. And what he did, he's a very sophisticated buyer, he took a pencil to paper, so to speak, and figured out, okay, if it appraises for X, how much more am I going to have to bring to closing? So if it's a $300,000 house and it only appraises for $280,000, they're going to have to bring the down payment, maybe that's 20% of the $280,000, right? And they're also going to have to make up the difference between $280,000 and $300,000 in this example. But there's a lot of craziness going on. So now what's happening is at listing appointments, we're projecting how much a house is ultimately going to sell for. Years ago, it was a lot less or significantly less than the list price. In the last several years, few years, it's been a little bit less than the list price in many cases. Now we're actually projecting, you'll probably get to your number because we're going to sell your house potentially for over the list price. How crazy is that? It can't keep up, can it? I'd love to know what you think, guys. Please feel free to comment. Thanks.